Pakistan. Here we
the
go.
resilience of its institutions, and the role of civil society. So today, we are fortunate to have with us three distinguished experts who bring deep insights into these issues. Mr. Salman Akram Raja is a senior advocate of the Supreme Court of Pakistan, known for his expertise in constitutional law, civil rights, and public interest litigation. He has played a critical role in landmark cases involving democratic governance, rule of law, and judicial independence. He is also the General Secretary of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf. Our second distinguished panelist is Mr. Hamid, who is Pakistan's one of the most prominent journalists, political commentators, and television news anchor. Over a career spanning more than 3 decades, he has reported extensively on politics, security, and human rights situation in South Asia. He is also a recipient of numerous awards for press freedom and courage, including the Halal Imtiaz, one of the Pakistan's highest civilian honors. Today's discussion will be moderated by Mr. Michael Kugelman, who has remained associated with the Wilson Center and is one of the leading American analysts on Pakistan and South Asia. His work focuses on political stability, US relations, and security dynamics in the region. A prolific writer and commentator, Kugelman regularly contributes to international media outlets and policy forums, providing nuanced perspectives on Pakistan's internal politics and its broader geopolitical context. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our distinguished guests. Please.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. It's an honor for me to be here. I want to thank the organizers for having me. I've been a student of Pakistan for about 2 decades. I'm a frequent visitor, and some have described me as an honorary Pakistani. I assume that's a compliment. Someone as a Pakistani tells me that. But it's really great to be here, and this panel is especially important, but also a delicate and a complex topic to discuss. The tone of this panel, this conversation, will be critical, but it will be respectful and civil. So, the focus of this panel is on pathways to democracy. And I would argue, just to sort of provide some context here, as I see it, and of course I am an outside observer of Pakistan, democracy has long been a bit of a paradox in Pakistan. On the one hand, there have been, of course, elections, active civil society focused on a range of social issues, a structurally liberalized media, dozens of channels and papers. There's been a successful pro-democracy movement that brought down a dictator. And Pakistan is now in its longest ever period of formal civilian rule. But you know the rest. We have a highly lopsided civil-military relationship in favor of one side, for sure. Democratic institutions have struggled, particularly the parliament, I would argue. There have been frequent crackdowns on dissent, religious minorities, the free press, more recently the internet, which one could argue is one of the last remaining bastions of freedom of speech. Judiciary has tended to be co-opted. Overall, as an observer, mapping democratization trends in Pakistan over the last 15 years shows, I would argue, a difficult picture. If you go back to the year 2010, I think it was 2010, that was a few years removed from the lawyers' movement. Formal civilian rule had returned. The 18th Amendment had, I think, raised hopes of decentralizing and democratizing power. In my time studying Pakistan, that period for me was one where I sensed there was the most optimism about democracy. But then challenges have worsened since then, leading to today. And I think that even the most optimistic observer would admit or argue that the democratic picture faces quite a few challenges. And just a very brief aside here, given that I sit in Washington and have for quite some time, if you look at the US approach to democracy in Pakistan over the years, I would argue that it has also been a paradox. So on the one hand, the U.S. government over the years has provided capacity building assistance to democratic institutions like Parliament. It sought to help bolster civil society through journalist exchanges, grants to NGO leaders, among other things. But it has also privileged its relations with unelecteds, and we know who that refers to. And I would argue that no U.S. administration has ever truly made democracy a pillar of policy in Pakistan, and that would include those administrations that had made particular efforts to elevate democracy to be a key priority for foreign policy. I would name Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, and Joe Biden as well. At any rate, really honored to be here with our two panelists today. They really don't need any introduction. They were introduced earlier, so I won't say anything more about them. But I've admired them both for their bravery and so many other things. It's great to meet both of them in person for the first time. So this will be a forward-thinking discussion. We will discuss the nature of democracy and its challenges, but we'll also look at possible reforms and solutions that can help move the needle forward toward more participatory, accountable institutions and a more democratic political system on the whole. So I'll ask each of our panelists a few questions, and then we'll open things up to the audience. So I guess maybe we'll start with you, Mr. Mir. I think for this first question, it would be useful for you each to speak about your own personal lived experiences with democracy and its challenges. So for you, as a journalist, under both civilian and military regimes, how do you feel that media freedom has evolved in Pakistan? And to keep this focus on forward thinking, what practical steps do you think can be taken to safeguard press freedom in the face of pressure from the state and the non-state?
Thank you, Michael. You gave a very excellent brief about the situation in Pakistan. And the question about press freedom in Pakistan, press freedom is linked with the freedom of parliament and judiciary. So we cannot discuss press freedom in isolation because there is no free parliament, if there is no free judiciary, so you cannot have a free press in Pakistan. So I think Salman Akram Raja will speak in detail that why judiciary is not free and why parliament is not free. So the media is not enjoying ideal freedom in Pakistan since long because there is no free parliament and there is no free judiciary. This is the main reason. But as far as my personal experience is concerned, when I was born, Pakistan was ruled by the first military dictator, General Ayub Khan. When I started my journalism in 1987, so the Pakistan was ruled by the third military dictator, General Ziaul Khan. When I was first banned in Pakistan on TV, so the fourth military dictator, General Pervez Musharraf, was ruling Pakistan. But why I say that those military dictators, they were not worse than some political dictators or the political players of Pakistani politics. You see, it was obvious that who is my enemy. A dictator is my enemy. So when I was banned in 2007, I was aware that it is the order of General Pervez Musharraf and he don't want to see my bloody face on. So he said, I don't want to see his face, ban him. So I was banned. But when I was banned in 2021, in a democratic regime, when Imran Khan was the Prime Minister, even Imran Khan one day sent me a message, who banned you? One of his ministers who came to my home, I told him the name, I said, the BIS. He said, oh, so what should I tell the Prime Minister? He was actually telling me that I cannot report back to the Prime Minister that you gave me the name of the media, right? General Fazli. I cannot tell this to the Prime Minister. No, I am not banned in Pakistan, but more than 7-8 colleagues, senior journalists and TV anchors, they are banned in Pakistan. And you know the names. Nobody knows who banned. You know why they don't tell the name? Because they think that if they will come to know about the name, so there will be naming and there will be some shaming. So they are afraid of naming and shaming. So they don't tell the name of the person who actually conveyed the order. So this is the situation. So there are positive things in Pakistan, not about press freedom. I can tell you many things, but your question is about press freedom, and you fix me in a situation in which I cannot make a balance. Sometimes you have to make a balance as a journalist, but the press freedom is the issue where I cannot make a balance. You know why? Why I cannot make the balance? I am the person who filed a petition against PICA law, Pakistan Electronic Crimes Act, PICA, which came into 2016, again in 2021. So in 2021, it was imposed through a presidential ordinance because the then cabinet was not ready to approve some changes in the PICA law. So the President of Pakistan promulgated an ordinance. And when this ordinance was imposed on the Pakistani media, I filed a petition in Islamabad High Court. And the then Chief Justice of Islamabad High Court, Justice Akram, within 24 hours, he gave us some relief, and slowly and gradually after some hearings, he said he gave a verdict against PICA law. So we got some relief. Now this government, they again impose this PICA law, which is worse than the presidential ordinance. This PICA law is approved by the Parliament of Pakistan without a discussion of even 1 minute. No discussion on this law in the Parliament of Pakistan, even for 1 minute. So I challenged the PICA law again in the Islamabad High Court. And there is hearing, and then there is another hearing. No relief. I filed a petition in Islamabad High Court to investigate the assassination of our colleague Arshad Sharif 1 year ago. So the last Chief Justice of Islamabad High Court, he said, after some hearing, he announced, I have reserved my decision. So the decision is reserved now. I will make an announcement after writing my verdict. So after 1 year, he was promoted to the Supreme Court of Pakistan, and there is no verdict even today. Okay. So in the past, we were able to get relief on press freedom issues from the judiciary. Now we cannot get that relief. So that's why I said that the press freedom is linked with the freedom of judiciary and with the freedom of parliament. If these two institutions are not free, we are not free.
Thank you. Well, thank you for laying that all out. Now let's turn to the judiciary side. Of course, you come here as a barrister, but also as a political figure, as a senior leader with PTI. How do you think judicial independence has fared in the face of political and institutional pressures? And what legal reforms do you think are needed to ensure that the judiciary can act as a neutral arbiter in Pakistan's democracy?
Thank you. I don't think any reforms can create judicial independence. It's a mistake that a lot of people make in thinking that there is something you can write on a piece of paper and get Parliament to enact which will improve things. So as we speak, there is no judicial independence. In fact, there is a complete suspension of the constitutional order. of the legal order. We have courts, we have a parliament, we have the election commission, but these are now all illusions. What is actually running the country is the act of abduction and torture. So whatever is needed to be done, a certain number of people will get abducted, journalists, lawyers, even judges have complained of surveillance, equipment has been discovered in their bedrooms, and so on. So what is running Pakistan now is pure naked coercion and accompanying torture. People disappear, they turn up after 40 days, their eyes are glazed, they can no longer speak properly, and they're silenced. So what do you do when a state has is being run through naked, brutal aggression and coercion? Any law that you write on a piece of paper is meaningless. So we have any number of laws ensuring judicial independence, ensuring the independence of the election commission, ensuring the independence of the prosecution service, the National Accountability Bureau, the office holders have constitutional security of tenure, all of that you can think of is there on paper. But none of it means anything, nothing at all. So whatever is needed gets done, and a constitutional amendment was enacted through abduction. Now, our own PTI members got abducted, BNP, which is the Baloch National Party, their members got abducted. I will not name some other parties, their members of parliament got abducted. And on the day when voting was to take place, they were produced out of vehicles, staggering, stumbling, brought into the house and made to vote a certain way. People's wives have been abducted, daughters have been abducted, children are abducted. They come to your home looking for you, you're not there. They'll take away your brothers, they'll take away your 80-year-old father. So that is how Pakistan is being run today. And that is why when I hear people talk about economic stability, about inflation having come down, about budgetary policies that are safe, I cringe. This is creating a false binary here. None of this means anything when you have a jungle out there. You cannot have the mere suggestion that there is good economic governance while people are being beaten up, trashed. The election of February 2024 was blatantly manipulated. On election day, I was a candidate from a constituency in Lahore. It was the most glorious day of my life. Before the election, the PTI election symbol had been taken away in a country which is still, to a very large extent illiterate. The election symbol is the only way to identify your candidate, the candidate of the party that you wish to vote for. And we were denied an election symbol, so I was a candidate for the National Assembly from a constituency in Lahore. There were 5 other candidates of the PTI for provincial assembly seats under the same constituency. So we had 6 election symbols for the same party going into the February election. And yet people, illiterate women, knew who to vote for. They had painted our symbols on their hands, on their faces, and reminded each other. So 6 symbols painted on your face, and you knew who you were going to vote for on the day. And that's what they did. It was the most magnificent democratic response that any people anywhere in the world could have given to this kind of brutality. And they'd come out of a long period of brutality after the 9th of May, when PTI demonstrations at various places were held to be, in effect, mutiny against the army, which wasn't the case. So these people nevertheless voted, but then what they did, it was a landslide for the PTI. We know we won 180 seats that day. This was, by far, greater than a simple majority, almost a two-thirds majority. But the results were changed overnight. The results were simply drawn up. We just wrote up fictitious results and announced results the next morning. That had nothing at all to do with how voting was actually done, particularly in the province of Punjab and in the city of Karachi, where we won 19 out of 21 seats. Hyderabad we won 1 seat. All of this was taken away. Now, if that is the system that you're dealing with, then what do you say about reform? So any reform that you do on paper will mean nothing as long as this imbalance remains. Imbalance in terms of the coercive power that those who we dare not name, but we name them now all the time, come to exercise over the entire system. So the primary fault line is the refusal to accept the constitutional legal framework, whatever it might be. And if I could go back to an anecdote, before I joined politics actively, which was 3 years ago, I was a constitutional lawyer. I was a lawyer for Saeed Khan. In 2012, when that case was finally decided by the Supreme Court after 16 years of pendency, no judge, no bench would touch it. Now, the case pertained to what Air Marshal Asghar Khan, a much celebrated, decorated Air Chief of the 1960s, had written to the then Chief Justice in 1996 complaining that the 1990 election was rigged and Benazir Bhutto was prevented from winning that election in 1990. And facts had come out in 1996 to suggest that the then DGISI and the Chief of Army Staff had hatched a conspiracy to keep Benazir Bhutto out. So Air Marshal Asghar Khan, as a retired Chief of the Air Force, wrote to the then Chief Justice saying, this has brought infamy to the armed forces. This amounted to violation of the oath that every officer takes not to interfere in the political process. Therefore, I want action to be taken. Now that letter was converted into a constitutional petition. You could do that under our constitution. And proceedings were commenced, but then not commenced with. It took 16 years. Finally, after the lawyers' movement of 2007 to 2009, the Chief Justice took up the matter and it finally got decided in 2012. So I was counsel for Air Marshal Asghar Khan, and for that 10-month period in the year 2012, I interrogated the former DGISI and the former Chief of the Army Staff, General Aslam Beg, would stand on my left, General Asad Durrani would stand on my right in the courtroom, and I got to question them about their actions. Finally, after the end of that 10-month period, the judgment was announced, and the bench announced a short verdict saying both of them had violated their oaths of office, both of them had subverted the constitutional process in 1990 by interfering with the process, and the DGISI had in fact given an affidavit. So it was very interesting. If I may take 30 seconds. The then Army Chief, Aslam Beg, had simply said, I was directed by the then President, Mr. Wajahat Khan, to do what I did. I was bound by the command of the superior, so he took the Nuremberg defense. And therefore, I am not to be blamed. I simply acted on the directions of the President. But the then DGISI, Asad Durrani, said, no. I was a 3-star general of the Pakistan Army. I was a DGISI. What I did with complete conviction that Benazir Bhutto was a national security threat, and she had to be stopped from coming back into office. And he actually filed an affidavit in which he described why he thought that Benazir Bhutto was a national security threat. And it included, it's now a published judgment, so I can narrate what he said in that affidavit. He said she was in favor of stopping support for the Khalistan movement in East Punjab and Indian Punjab, and we thought stopping support for the Khalistan movement was against national security. She was in favor of some limited restrictions on the nuclear program. This was completely unacceptable. Therefore, we decided that she would never be allowed back into office. So that sentiment remained, and at the end of it all, when the Supreme Court of Pakistan pointed towards him and said, you, General Durrani, violated your oath of office, and you took decisions that you were not entitled to take, and you, General Aslam Beg, violated your oath of office. You interfered with the political process against the mandate of the people of Pakistan. And they announced their judgment and they walked out of the courtroom. One of the two generals, I'll give them that benefit of anonymity, standing next to me, said, I will do it 100 times again. After these 16 years of hearings and this Supreme Court judgment, he said, she was a national security threat, and I will do it 100 times again. So that sentiment is alive. So it doesn't matter what the law is, it doesn't matter what the Supreme Court says. Once they decide that somebody is undesirable, then nothing matters. They will abduct, they will even assassinate, they will do whatever is needed to ensure that they get what they call positive results. That is why the people's movement that we see today in Pakistan is so inspiring. In my mind, it's the greatest thing that's happened in our history. The resilience that people are showing. People leaving their normal lives to come out and stand against this brutality really is something that is our only hope. There is no other path to redemption, if you like, except for resilience on the part of ordinary people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barrister Raja. I actually want to stay with you, and I'll ask each of you one more question before we open up to the audience. And I think that some of this will follow up what you just left off on, Barrister Raja. So, from a strictly constitutional perspective, what is the appropriate role of the military in governance, and what legal safeguards could prevent overreach while respecting national security concerns?
There is no role in governance of the armed forces. There is a constitutional oath of office that every officer,
Mic is open, but the other two mics
says
are
that I
closed.
solemnly swear on the Holy Quran that I will not interfere in the political process. And that oath is routinely, violated. So that is there. There is no other formal role in the governance of the country afforded to the armed forces. Yet we know that the country ultimately is run by, the de facto power and not the de jure power. So I don't know what change you could make to the legal or the constitutional structure to prevent that. We have Article 6 of the Constitution, which says that anybody interfering with the constitutional process, suspending, abrogating the Constitution will be held or will be deemed to have committed high treason, and high treason is punishable with death. But it doesn't matter. So Pervez Musharraf was awarded death by a tribunal that was set up. And that judgment ultimately was set aside by the Supreme Court, and that was that. Of course, the judgment was granted after Pervez Musharraf had been toppled and had left the country. So while they're there, it's unthinkable for any court to interfere and to say that what you're doing is unconstitutional. So we have all the constitutional safeguards that you can possibly think of, and yet nothing matters.
Thank you for the candor. So back to you, Hamid Mir. When it comes to the issue of polarization, we know that Pakistan's politics are very polarized. I mean, the world's politics are very polarized. This is not a Pakistan-specific issue. But could you comment on the issue of polarization in politics, how it affects the media's role in the discourse, in democratic discourse, and what can journalists do, what can media institutions do to restore public trust and informed debate? And along with that, I would love if you could respond to what Barrister Raja had said about resistance and civil society responding to what's going on, if you have any thoughts on that as well.
First of all, I would like to address first part of your question, polarization. I want to add something which Barrister Salman have already said. He gave a reference of the Asghar Khan case. There are many things which are not part of the Supreme Court judgment, but we have the documents. We have the documentary evidence which proves that there was no documentary evidence available against Benazir Bhutto. Those who said that she was a security threat, there was no documentary evidence available against her. But during the reporting of Asghar Khan case, I found some evidence which proved that actually it was General Ziaul Haq who was a security threat to Pakistan, who was helping those people who wanted to break Pakistan. There is evidence available which is not in the public. I try to highlight that evidence sometimes, but I face problems. Now I will tell you what is the evidence. Salman Sahab is aware that DG ISI, General Asad Durrani, gave an affidavit that on the orders of the President of Pakistan and the Chief of the Army Staff, he distributed money among different political parties to defeat Benazir Bhutto. But in that affidavit, he deliberately missed some names. And one of the names was GM Sayyid. ISI gave 6 million Pakistani rupees to GM Sayyid, who was the head of the GSIN movement. GSIN movement wanted to break away from Pakistan. It's a Sindhi nationalist party. And GM Saeed was openly propagating for the breakup of Pakistan, breakup of Sindh from Pakistan. When I came to know that Asad Durrani gave money to GM Saeed, so we started investigating that who was the person, who was the middleman, and why Asad Durrani never mentioned this name. So we came to know, unfortunately, one former law minister of Pakistan, who was one of the founders of the 1973 constitution, Mr. Abdul Hafiz Pirzada. He was the middleman, and because he developed some differences with the People's Party leadership, so he was used by the ISI generals to send that money to GM Saeed through another middleman who belonged to his party. So then some of journalists, including myself, we tried that Abdul Hafiz Pirzada should give us an interview and he should accept that. Pirzada Sahab, he was not feeling well in the last days of his life, so he was also writing a book, and one day he told me, by the way, he was also the lawyer of Imran Khan to investigate the rigging in 2030 election. So when I appeared in the Supreme Court of Pakistan as a witness from his party, so Hafiz Pirzada Sahab, he never asked me serious questions. So I realized that he is not interested to provide justice to PTI. So I contacted him and I said, I want to know why you delivered 6 billion rupees to Sidhu Deshtari. And then on the record, he said, he confessed, yes, I gave that money to GM Saeed, and we were also told to convey instructions. Now the instruction is coming from the intelligence agency, from security agencies to the enemies of Pakistan, that these are 5 specific they identified 5 constituencies in the Sindh province, that this money should be used in some constituencies where People's Party is very strong. So all these supporters of the GSM Tehreek should vote for the IGI candidate. What was the name? What was the meaning of the IGI? Islami Jamhuri Ittihad. They were using the name of Islam, and they gave the tickets to the enemies of Pakistan in the name of Islam, and then they gave money to them to defeat Benazir Bhutto. So, you see, these are the facts which our young generation is not aware of. And I added that. This is the polarization. Polarization not among political parties. This is polarization between the military establishment and the political leadership. This is the polarization, and this is the core issue. This is the one thing. And you asked me another thing, but you see, I know that we are short of time. I agree with Salman Akram Sahab, but I will say it in a different way, because he belongs to a political party, I don't belong to a political party. What is the good thing? What is the positive thing in today's Pakistan? Why we have not left Pakistan? Like thousands of people. I know most of you will go back to Pakistan. But you know what is the positive thing? The youngsters in Balochistan, in Sindh, in Punjab, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, in Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan, I am observing it first time in my journalistic life after 35 years, that the young generation, belonging to all provinces are thinking on the same lines. They are on one page. This is very but what is the problem? What is the problem? What is the problem? They believe in peaceful struggle. So, take arms in their hand and go for a bloody revolution. So that's why it will take some time, but I'm very optimistic that whatever we have discussed here today, the problem, solution is there in the Constitution of Pakistan. As you know that Article 244 restricts the involvement of interference of army in politics. Even not today, not tomorrow, but day after tomorrow. This constitution will be implemented. Why I am sure. General Ziaul Haq abrogated 1973 constitution. The constitution was restored. Pervez Musharraf violated this constitution again and again. Twice it was restored. Now this constitution is suspended in Pakistan. It is not. No institution is implementing or working according to the Constitution of Pakistan. But this is the only consensus document left for people like me or you. Only consensus document. The current generation of politicians, they don't have the capacity or the capability to make a new constitution. Because there is a lot of polarization. And it is a managed polarization. It is a managed polarization, divide and rule. So this 1973 constitution will hit back. And I have a belief that everyone in Pakistan who violated this constitution, he was disrespected and humiliated by the history, not by the people of Pakistan, by the history. So those who are humiliating this constitution today, they will be humiliated by the history of Pakistan.
Very quick, yeah.
Something to what Hamid has just said, in complete agreement with Hamid. 3 weeks ago, I went to a place called Lakpas in Mastoom district in Balochistan. This is about 150 miles south of Quetta, in core Baloch territory. Some would say BLA territory. And the point that we went to, a suicide attack had happened there just 2 days earlier. This was a sit-in by the Baloch National Party, headed by Akhtarjan Mengal. And we'd gone there as PTI to support that dharna. Dharna is a sit-in. Now what I saw there was thousands of women sitting on a road, off the road in this wilderness, carrying photographs of sons, husbands, fathers, who'd gone missing. Some 2 years ago, some 5 years ago, some 10 years ago. Akhtarjan Mengal's own brother had gone missing 35 years ago. So these were thousands of these women sitting there, and you had to look at them, to realize the depth of the sorrow and the anger in their eyes, on their faces. And I said to them, they asked me to speak, and I said to them that, look, we've come to share your sorrows. We've come to call out to Maharang Baloch, to sit with her, to shed tears with her, but to give you your rights under the Constitution of Pakistan. And they all clapped. So there is still, the attachment to the Constitution of Pakistan. I said, I come here as representative of Imran Khan to tell you that we stand with you, we want to fight with you for the Constitution of Pakistan, for your rights under the Constitution. So the people have not given up on the Constitution. It's the powers that be that ensure that the Constitution is never acted upon. And that, Hamid correctly says, is the only way forward. A constitution is a political event. It doesn't happen just because you sit down on a table and write some words. It is the consequence of a process, of a dialectical process. So we have a constitution which can be improved certainly. Any number of amendments that I would make to it. I would give Balochistan more of a role in parliament in electing the prime minister. At the moment you can elect a prime minister through votes from just 4 divisions of Punjab. So MNAs, members of the National Assembly from 4 divisions of Punjab, can actually elect a prime minister. Balochistan doesn't matter. So I would give Balochistan a lot more weight in the Senate and make Senate also part of the electoral college for electing a prime minister. So these are changes you can make to the constitution. But this requires that you respect the constitution and the constitutional process. You don't abduct people to make constitutional amendments. You enter into conversations, into dialogue to amend the constitution. And that is the only way forward. Thank you.
Okay, we're a very patient audience, and I want to get to some questions. We have limited time, but I think if it's okay with the two of you, we'll take a group of questions together. And please, when you're called on, keep the question brief, and I would invite our speakers to offer concise responses as well. I like to emphasize students, or prioritize students, at least initially. So we'll start with the gentleman in the back with the blue blazer on, back there. Yeah, we need a mic.
Assalamu alaikum, thank you so much. My question is from Hamid. As you know, like you mentioned some journalists, like 6 or 7 of them, or what is happening with them, something like that. And the former Prime Minister Imran Khan, as we all know, he's being imprisoned and he's the most influential person in the history. Like he's being imprisoned, which is all against the constitution. So, and whatever is happening with Imran Riaz, like as we know, he's a really popular, renowned journalist who has to flee the country. So what do you expect, like what I can expect as a normal human being to go back to my country to say something against them? What's gonna happen to me? My second question is Afghan. No, like we all have a similar question. The second question is regarding the Afghan people right now, whatever is doing with the Afghanis. So don't you think as per the Constitution 1973 Article 15, everybody has a right to live in the country, and as per the international laws, UDPR, ICCPR, Article 15 and Article 12 says that everybody has a right to live in a country and they have a right to have a nationality where they are being born. So there is a lot of people, Afghan people, whose kids are being born, whose fathers are being born, whose grandfathers are being born. Don't you think they need to have a right to have a nationality in that country?
Okay. Thank you. We'll take a few questions. Yeah, go to this side, and then we'll take 2 from the other side. The gentleman over here.
Hi. First of all, I'd just like to clarify my position here. I think PTI does represent the most major opposition to the army in a very long time, and the most meaningful one. But that being said, the only way to really decrease the army's involvement in politics is for the political parties to agree that they will work together and not include the army itself. And corruption and abuse of power notwithstanding, that was the case with the democratic consensus that PMLN and PPP had. And the breakage of that consensus was the PTI through the army. But my question right now actually is, based on everything that's happened so far, what are your reflections in terms of moving forward, how the PTI can create a political system where the army doesn't play a role? Thank you.
Thanks. And let's take 2 more. I'm going to try to have, okay, we'll take one right here, gentleman right here, and then a lot of hands were up very quickly. The gentleman in the back there. Go ahead.
So, Barrister Salman, my question is about the lawyers' movement in Pakistan. I was politically aware enough to witness the 2007 movement of Pakistan, and like we see right now that beyond the powers that be, I think lawyers are the most powerful in Pakistan. And I think we see that in PTI as well. Like you are relatively more protected than other political cadre in PTI. So my question is like, what should be the expectations from the lawyers right now, and why have they not acted the way, for example, they acted in 2007?
Thanks. And then last question, let's see if we have, yeah, gentleman right there.
Hi, just one simple question, Imran, for Salman. When is Imran Khan coming out?
Okay.
It's a good question.
Would you like to go for
First question was about what will happen if you criticize the British establishment, if you go back to Pakistan, what will happen? You have already responded your question, and you very correctly apprehended the situation. What will happen to you if you go back to Pakistan? That is the reality, but you see, there are not 1, 2, 3 or 4. There are dozens of journalists in Pakistan who criticize the regime, who criticize the human rights violations, and they get arrested and they face problems, but they are there, they are fighting back. So that's what I said few moments ago, that this resilience is not only restricted to the PTI supporters. In fact, sorry to say, Salman Akram is sitting here. I am a journalist, I have to tell you the truth. These days, PTI is actually dominated by the enemies of Imran Khan. There are a lot of people who are not working for Imran Khan, they are working for the enemies of Imran Khan. Okay? So this is the first problem. But there are other parties also. This resilience among all the provinces and the youth belonging to all the provinces of Pakistan, it is not only PTI. There are other parties who are very popular. Like in KPK and Balochistan, PTM is very popular. Pashtun Tahfuz movement. It is banned by the government of Pakistan. In Balochistan, Baloch Judicial Committee, it's not a political party. It's a group fighting for the human rights. Their leader, Maran Baloch, is very popular. Okay? So that's why few weeks back when PTI tried to hold a all-parties conference in Islamabad, they contacted PTM, they contacted Baloch Judicial Committee and other groups, some Sindhi nationalists also, to come and speak about their problems in Islamabad. So some came, some regretted. They said, we will try to come Islamabad, but we will get arrested. And in the end, what happened, that even I saw Salman Akram Raja entering in the hotel by jumping a big wall. They were not allowed to hold that APC. And I also did the same. And then we came back. So you see, this is the situation. Yes, the journalists are facing problems in Pakistan, but this is not the first time we are facing problems. We have faced problems in the past. We defeated enemies of media freedom in the past, and we will defeat them again.
The question was, what is the way forward? I completely agree. The way forward is for all political forces to come together and to decide, once and for all, that there will be no military interference in the political system, in the governance of the country, to have a consensus on that. And I think the PTI clearly today stands for that. Your comment about its past notwithstanding, all parties are entitled to evolve. And I see no two voices within the PTI now. Imran Khan himself is very clear that the country has to now work in accordance with the constitution and without any military interference. So this whole idea of a hybrid regime really in the end leaves nothing of the civilian power or of the constitutional order in place. What we end up with is brute force. So I think we're very clear, and that's a great historic advance. But more than the political parties, I think this has to be a societal consensus. I do not still see the elite in Pakistani society, the intellectual elite. Hamid is very much an exception. The business elite agreeing to this. So you have far too many people willing to accept dictatorial, anti-constitutional structures. And the argument always is, look, at least they stabilized the economy, look at South Korea, they grew under a dictatorship and so on. And my response to them always is, how will you ensure that the next dictator or the present dictator will be a General Park and not a Mugabe? So you really have to agree on the principles. You cannot live in anticipation of a benign, enlightened philosopher or dictator. That may or may not happen. And even if it happens, it still violates the dignity of each one of us as human beings to be ruled over by a dictator. So that societal consensus is essential. While the political consensus is probably heading in that direction, the present incarnation of the PPP and the PMLN notwithstanding, one is disappointed in both of these parties in what they're doing at the moment. The 26th Amendment is a travesty of the spirit of the Constitution, yet these parties have colluded to enact it. But we are moving, I think, in the right direction because of people like yourselves and your counterparts inside Pakistan who are saying a firm no to dictatorship. Of course, if you go back, with these views, you will face problems. I'm facing 18 criminal charges, including a murder case. So it happens. So we, as I said, what we have is a travesty. And there is absolutely no possibility of my avoiding jail. I know I'm going to spend a fair amount of time in the next several months in jail, but that's all right. It's not something which is unthinkable. Hundreds and thousands of people have been to jail in our history, fighting for a cause, fighting for a purpose. So what if I have to spend a year or a couple of years or whatever in jail? I'm completely prepared to do that. So you have to. Hamid mentioned, he's a survivor of an assassination attempt. So these things don't happen easily. You pay the price for standing for your principles. And whether it's your life or your liberty, hopefully, he survived. I'm so glad, so happy Hamid survived the attack on his life. And hopefully I'll survive an attack on But, it is not something that you, impose on yourself by way of deterrence to just become an observer. I was happy being a television observer and a constitutional lawyer. But a point comes when you have to go beyond that. Life does not happen on a TV screen. Life happens out there. It happens in Mastum, it happens in Pishin, it happens in Lahore, where people have been beaten up, their homes broken, electoral results changed. So you have to engage with life. You cannot just be an observer and a commentator. I mean, that is certainly a role that is important. But in order to bring about real change, many of us will have to be on the ground, will have to endure whatever comes our way, and carry on with it.
Michael, I want to
Very quick, yeah.
Very quickly, the young smart boy was thinking about his own return back to Pakistan. I want to tell you one thing. It was not easy for me and Salman Akram Raja to come here. You see, before coming here, we met secretly here and there. In Islamabad. How will we cross the immigration? Not the American immigration. And then, there was a common friend, he was making some plans. Punjabi में वो कहता है इंज कर ले. He managed and I also managed. But we are not saying that what will happen when we will go back after saying all these things.
Well, my this is tremendous. My only regret from this panel is that our two speakers did not speak their mind. I wish they would have. Really, your candor was very much respected. I think that we can agree that our two panelists are not only very thoughtful, but also very brave, given what they've gone through and will continue to go through. So, if we have a round of applause for our.
Standing ovation for Hamid Mir and Salman Akram Raja.
In favor of constitutionalism and democracy, which is a very important point. So, thank you very much.
Interesting. आज का चौथा पैनल था ये democracy पे. Salman is still speaking.
Many years ago. There used to be a professor called Professor Roberto Unger. I don't know if he's still around or not. And the last lecture that he delivered, as the year was coming to an end, at the end of the course, he said, looking at all of us, 99% of you will become corporate advisors at Wall Street and you'll all become fabulously wealthy and so on. But one of you out there somewhere will go out and become an advisor to the people. So what I'm doing here, and he said we'd been teaching then for 35, 40 years, every year he said, I come here to talk to that one person among you who's going to be with the people out there.
amazing thoughts to end on. तकरीबन घंटे का पैनल था, fantastic, very engaged. इमरान का क्वेश्चन नहीं किसी ने जवाब दिया, but Imran was a big deal in all of this. Imran Khan was the elephant in the room. Let's show you कि क्या हो रहा है, कौन है. ये डॉक्टर रजा बाकर हैं, ये तैमूर खान झगड़ा से मिल रहे हैं, पीछे हामिद मीर साहब हैं. That's all happening there. ये जो कॉन्फ्रेंसिंग है, ये जो हार्वर्ड में हुई है 2 हफ्ते पहले, हमने येल में की थी. ये एक शुरुआत है. डायस्पोरा के अलग अलग रंग सामने आ रहे हैं. अब एक ऑब्वियसली आप जो बार देखते हैं, जो देखते आ रहे हैं कि इमरान खान को रिहा करो. संगे, हाउ आर यू, क्या हाल है? आई एम लाइव. हाउ यू डूइंग? Good to meet you finally in the flesh. I'm live with Taimoor Khan Jhagra. How are you liking the conference?
I think it's great to see the energy of so many people here, and I hope that they can keep this spirit up. There's both anger and a lot of desire to do something. It's not an easy time to be here, but I hope people back home can see the sentiment over here, and I hope that sooner or later someone can wake up and smell the coffee.
Do you think it's ironic that you can talk more freely here versus back home?
No, I don't think that's ironic at all. I think it's actually a little bit of a catch-22, because you talk here and then you wonder what will happen when you go back home.
That's what everybody's been wondering. Well, we must reconnect in a bit.
Yeah.
Let me wrap this up.
Absolutely.
And your bit was excellent. I saw it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just live. Give me a second. So that was Taimoor Khan Jhagra. Again, जो मैं कह रहा था वो ये था कि जो डायस्पोरा के अलग अलग रंग हैं वो आ रहे हैं. अभी हफ्ते 10 दिन में 4 मई को गालिबान न्यू जर्सी में एक और कॉन्फ्रेंस है, बिल्कुल अलग नौइयत की. हैदर मेहदी होंगे, वो अपने स्टाइल से बात करेंगे, मैं हूँगा. बट द वेरी फैक्ट इज दैट दिस इज एसेंशियल, दिस इज इम्पोर्टेंट एंड दिस इज क्रिटिकल. ये जो हो रहा है ना पीछे, दिस इज समथिंग विच हैजंट बीन डन बिफोर. हुआ है स्पेस में, बट अब पिकअप कर रहे हैं. हमारा मौक़िफ़ बड़ा सिंपल है. लेट द डिबेट गो ऑन. गुड क्वेश्चंस हैव बीन आस्क्ड. अभी थोड़ी देर में फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर आएंगे, उनसे होपफुली वो सवाल पूछे जाएंगे जो बैक होम नहीं पूछे जा सकते. सो या वी आर गोना ट्राई. सॉरी अबाउट द ऑडियो. जो ऑडियो था हॉल में वो मैंने दिखाया, बट दिखाता रहूँगा. ये ऑर्गेनाइजर्स हैं. दे से हाय. This is Hadi. He's one of the organizers, and this is all young graduate students who've been doing this. It's fantastic of them to do this, and support करें हार्वर्ड की कॉन्फ्रेंस को और दीगर और जो कॉन्फ्रेंसेज हो रही हैं. बल्कि अगर आप पाकिस्तानी अमेरिकन स्टूडेंट हैं, पाकिस्तान में हैं या अमेरिका में हैं, so you should do your own conference. I'm happy to help, by the way. Happy to advise, happy to help. Inshallah, see you at the next one. अब मैं आगे गप लगाता हूँ.